ligature tightness, mechanical impossibility of finger insertion. A forensic analysis of cord, embedding, tissue response, and what the garrote reveals about restraint timing. When we examine the physical evidence of the garrote, the cord wrapped around a child's neck, embedded deeply into tissue, we confront something that requires us to think carefully about the physics of strangulation, the physiology of the neck under pressure, and what the visible evidence tells us about sequence. A deep ligature furrow encircles the entire neck. The width varies from 1/8 of an inch to 5/16 of an inch. The cord is flattened, measuring approximately 1/4 inch in width. This is not a loosely placed cord. This is not something applied gently or carelessly. This is deep, embedded tissue damage. This is a cord that has sunk into the flesh with significant pressure. And that depth creates a forensic problem for the official narrative. Because if the cord is embedded this deeply, if it has sunk this far into tissue, then something that is often claimed becomes physically impossible: the insertion of a finger beneath the ligature after it was applied. The narrowing of the space created by an embedded cord means access beneath it becomes geometrically constrained. This simple physical reality, that deeply embedded cords do not permit finger access, has profound implications for understanding what happened and when. The physics of cord embedding, how pressure creates furrows. When a cord is placed around a neck and pressure is applied, the cord does not simply rest on the surface. The cord sinks into tissue. This process is gradual but predictable. As pressure increases, the cord compresses the skin, subcutaneous fat, and muscle beneath it. The tissue deforms. It compresses. Blood supply is cut off. The tissue becomes darker, bruised. The skin is abraded by the cord's surface. The depth of the furrow, how far the cord sinks, is directly related to the amount of pressure applied and the duration of that pressure. A loosely applied cord creates a shallow furrow, barely visible. A moderately applied cord creates an obvious depression. A cord applied with sustained, significant pressure creates a deep furrow, the kind documented in JonBenet's autopsy. The autopsy describes a deep ligature furrow encircles the entire neck. It is described as encircling the entire circumference. It is horizontal in orientation. The width varies from 1/8 of an inch to 5/16 of an inch. This depth, this is not a furrow created by a briefly applied cord. This is the mark of sustained pressure. This is tissue that has been compressed further, perhaps tightened over time, as circulation failed and tissue swelled. The space problem. Why finger insertion becomes impossible. Imagine pressing a cord around a neck. As you tighten, the cord sinks deeper. The skin above the cord bulges slightly. The skin below the cord bulges slightly. But the space directly under the cord, the space created by the cord itself, becomes narrower as the cord sinks and compresses tissue. A loosely applied cord might allow a finger to be inserted beneath it. There is space. There is room for a fingernail to hook under the cord. There is room to slide something between the cord and the skin, but a deeply embedded cord, a cord that has sunk a fraction of an inch into tissue, leaves no room. The cord sits in a depression. The tissue on either side bulges upward. The space beneath the cord is closed off. There is no gap. There is no room for a finger. There is no room for a fingernail to hook underneath. This is not a metaphorical problem. This is a physical reality. At some point during the tightening of a ligature, the space beneath it becomes so narrow that finger insertion becomes impossible. The transition happens gradually, but once crossed, it creates a definitive line. Fingers can fit beneath it, or they cannot. The forensic significance is this. If the final furrow is deep, if the cord is embedded deeply, then at the moment death occurred. The space beneath the ligature was already too narrow for finger insertion. Fingers could not be slipped under it. A fingernail could not hook beneath it. Access to the space beneath the cord did not exist. What the deep furrow reveals: duration and pressure. A deep furrow in the neck is not created by a quick tightening and release. It is created by sustained pressure. Sustained pressure over time. Pressure maintained as tissue swells, as circulation fails, as the body's response to asphyxiation changes the tissue's properties. When someone is first strangled, the tissue is normal. At normal hydration, normal pressure. As compression continues, blood cannot return from the head. The head swells. The tissue becomes congested. Pressure builds inside the tissues. The tissue becomes firmer, denser. As this happens, the same cord applying the same pressure now sinks deeper, because the tissue has become swollen and engorged. The furrow deepens. It becomes more pronounced. A deep furrow indicates this process occurred. It indicates sustained compression. It indicates time passed between the initial application of pressure and the moment the cord was finally removed, or the moment death was certified and the cord was removed for examination. This is forensically important because it means the ligature was not applied and immediately released. The ligature was not applied as a sudden shock. The ligature was maintained. It was sustained. It had time to create this deep, evident mark. Petechial hemorrhages and tissue response, the body's signature. The autopsy documents areas of petechial hemorrhage and abrasion on the skin above and below the ligature furrow. These are not random marks. They are the body's response to sustained pressure and oxygen deprivation. Petechial hemorrhages are tiny burst blood vessels. They occur when capillary pressure exceeds the capillary's structural integrity. The capillary ruptures. Blood leaks out into surrounding tissue, creating a tiny red or purple dot. In strangulation, as venous return is blocked, blood backs up and cannot return to the heart. Pressure builds in the capillaries. This pressure exceeds what the capillaries can withstand. They rupture. Petechiae appear. The presence of petechiae, combined with the deep ligature furrow, tells us about pressure and duration. The petechiae indicate sustained pressure. They indicate time. They indicate the body experienced this compression long enough for capillary rupture to occur. Abrasions indicate the cord was moving against the skin, or the skin was moving against the cord, or both were moving. Struggle, movement, resistance. The skin was abraded as tissue responded to compression and asphyxiation. All of these signs together, the deep furrow, the petechiae, the abrasions, paint a picture of sustained strangulation. Not a moment, not a second. An extended event. Skin bulging and compartmentalization, the architecture of embedded cord. When a cord embeds deeply into the neck, the tissue responds in a specific way. Skin above the cord bulges upward. Skin below the cord bulges upward. The cord sits in a depression, a groove carved by pressure. This architecture, bulging above, bulging below, depression in between, creates a sealed space. The cord no longer sits loosely on the surface. It sits in a carved depression. Getting a finger beneath it would require lifting the cord upward, out of the depression it has created in the surrounding tissue. Imagine pressing a cord into soft clay. Press it deep. The clay deforms around the cord. The cord sinks. Now try to slide a finger beneath the cord while it rests in that depression. The bulges of clay prevent access. The cord is locked in place by the tissue's response to its pressure. The body's tissues respond similarly. As the cord compresses, tissue swells. Fluid accumulates. The tissue becomes engorged. The cord sinks deeper into this engorged tissue. The tissue bulges upward on either side. The cord becomes mechanically trapped, embedded in a tissue landscape that actively prevents its removal or even its manipulation. This is critical because it means that at the moment of death, or soon after, the cord was no longer something that could be easily repositioned or adjusted. It was embedded. It was stuck. It was surrounded by swollen tissue that had responded to the pressure and compression imposed upon it. Carotid compression and rapid physiological change. The ligature furrow is positioned approximately at the level of the cricoid cartilage, at the front of the neck, where the carotid arteries run on either side. The carotid arteries supply blood to the brain. If these arteries are compressed, blood flow to the brain is reduced or stopped. Unconsciousness can occur in seconds. Brain damage occurs in minutes. Compression of the carotid arteries creates a dramatic physiological change. Consciousness is lost. The struggling body goes limp. Oxygen deprivation becomes severe. At this moment, when consciousness is lost, the body's tissue response accelerates. Blood cannot return from the head due to venous obstruction. The head swells. Pressure builds. Tissue becomes engorged. A cord that was embedded to a certain depth at the moment carotid compression began now sinks deeper as the head swells and tissue engorges in response to complete circulatory compromise. The deep furrow we see at autopsy is not only the mark of the initial tightening, it is also the mark of this secondary embedding, the cord sinking deeper into swollen, engorged tissue as circulation fails and cerebral swelling increases. This two-stage embedding process means that achieving the deep furrow documented in the autopsy required not just application of pressure, but sustained pressure through the entire process of consciousness loss and the physiological cascade that follows. Fine motor control. Loss and what it reveals about capability. As carotid compression occurs and consciousness is lost, fine motor control disappears. The person being strangled loses the ability to perform delicate, precise movements. The person collapses. Limbs go limp. The body's responses become gross motor responses, thrashing, struggling, or total paralysis. What this means is that once consciousness is lost, the body being restrained can no longer perform the actions required to position a restraint, tighten it further, or make adjustments to it. The restrained person is incapacitated. They cannot help position the ligature. They cannot assist in any way. They are simply being acted upon. This fact is important because it reveals something about the sequence of events. The ligature was positioned, placed around the neck, and applied before consciousness was lost. Once it was applied and pressure began increasing, consciousness would be lost within seconds to perhaps a minute, depending on the specific anatomy and the degree of compression. After consciousness was lost, the ligature was maintained and possibly tightened further. But the positioning, the initial placement, the initial application of pressure, these occurred while consciousness was present, or the person was being rapidly losing consciousness. This means the person restraining the child had full fine motor control and full intentionality during the critical phase of ligature placement. They could position the cord precisely. They could control the knots. They could place the wooden stick and tie the cord around it. They could create the garrote's complex mechanical system. This is not consistent with a panicked, reactive response. This is consistent with intentional mechanical construction. This is consistent with planning, or at minimum, with deliberate, controlled action, even in a crisis moment. The garrote's construction. What mechanical sophistication reveals the garrote found around JonBenet's neck was not a simple cord. It was a sophisticated mechanical device. A cord was wrapped multiple times around a wooden stick. A knot secured the stick. Another part of the cord was tied in a loop that could be tightened by pulling on the standing part of the rope. This is a classic garrote design, a mechanical advantage device. Pulling the standing part of the rope tightens the loop. The stick rotates. The rope tightens around the neck. The mechanical advantage means small pulls create large pressure increases. It is an efficient device for strangulation. It is a device that requires knowledge to construct. It requires the ability to tie specific knots. It requires understanding of mechanical advantage. A person constructing this device, in the moment, under the stress of crisis, would need to know how to tie the specific knots required, understand mechanical advantage and how to create it, have the fine motor control to construct it while another person is being restrained or is unconscious, have the presence of mind to locate an appropriate stick. A paintbrush handle was used. Execute all of this with enough precision that the device functions correctly. This is not the work of someone in acute panic. This is the work of someone who either planned this in advance or who understood the mechanics well enough to construct it in real time. Or, this is the work of someone who, having found themselves in a crisis moment, created the device in a state of extreme psychological distress and focused determination. The hair entwined in the knot, timing evidence. The autopsy documents that blonde hair, matching JonBenet's hair, was entwined in the knot on the posterior aspect of the neck, and also in the cord wrapped around the wooden stick. Hair becomes entwined in a ligature or in a knot when there is friction between the hair and the cord, or when the cord is manipulated after hair is in contact with it. Hair does not spontaneously become entwined. It requires movement, tension, or manipulation. The fact that hair is entwined in both the back knot and in the wrapping around the stick suggests the garrote was being manipulated, tightened, possibly adjusted after it was placed. It suggests movement. It suggests the device was not simply placed and left, but was actively worked with, tightened, possibly adjusted. This entwined hair is evidence of the garrote being completed around the neck, placed and then actively tightened and adjusted. The hair became caught in the process. It was entangled as the cord was pulled tight, as the stick was rotated, as the mechanical system was activated. Hair entwined in a knot indicates time and action. It indicates the garrote was not simply placed and abandoned. It indicates it was actively operated. It indicates someone was applying pressure, tightening, maintaining the device. Position and access. The construction problem. To construct a garrote around someone's neck, to wrap cord around a stick multiple times, to tie knots, to create a functioning mechanical device, all while that person is being restrained, requires specific positioning and access. The person doing the restraining must be positioned where they can access both sides of the neck. They must be able to manipulate cord and wood. They must be able to apply pressure. They must be able to see what they are doing, at least initially, or know the process so well they can do it by feel. This suggests the person applying the garrote was behind, beside, or in a position of control over the restrained person. The restrained person was either sitting, lying down, or being held in a position that allowed the restrainer access to the back of the neck where the knot was tied. This was not a distant, external attack. This was close contact. This was someone near the restrained person, touching them, manipulating equipment around their neck, applying pressure, tightening mechanisms. This is not the profile of an intruder who entered an unknown home in darkness and happened upon a child. This is the profile of someone with control over the restrained person's positioning and access to their body at close range. What the embedded cord tells us, the impossible finger test. And here is where we return to the original forensic problem, the claim that someone inserted a finger beneath the ligature after it was applied. If the ligature is deep, if it has sunk deeply into tissue, if there is a depression carved into the neck by the pressure of the cord, then fingers cannot be inserted beneath it. There is no space. The tissue bulges above and below. The cord sits in a groove. Access is impossible. A claim that fingers were inserted beneath the ligature, that someone checked that the ligature was not too tight by sliding a finger under it, is forensically inconsistent with the depth of embedding documented at autopsy. Either the ligature was never deeply embedded, contradicting the autopsy findings, or fingers were never inserted beneath it, contradicting the narrative sometimes offered. One of these statements must yield to forensic reality. The cord cannot be both deeply embedded and allow for finger insertion. The physics does not permit both to be true. The deep furrow is documented. The embedding is real. Therefore, the finger insertion claim cannot be correct as a post-application check. Unless, and this is a critical possibility, the finger insertion occurred before the ligature was tightened to its final depth. If a finger was inserted while the cord was still loose, before full pressure was applied, before the cord embedded deeply, then finger insertion would be possible. But once tightened, once embedded, once the tissue responded by swelling and bulging around the cord, the space would close. The finger could no longer be extracted. This creates a different timeline. Application of ligature, insertion of checking finger, while still loose. Then, tightening, trapping the finger or the hand of the person checking, or the hand was withdrawn, and then final tightening occurred. The mechanical problem timeline. Let us think through the mechanics carefully. Ligature is placed around neck in loose fashion. A finger is inserted beneath it to check for tightness. This is possible. There is space. The ligature is then tightened. As tightening occurs, tissue swells. The cord sinks deeper. The space beneath the cord closes. By the time full compression is achieved and the deep furrow is formed, the space is gone. Fingers cannot be inserted or removed. If a finger was already present at the moment of full tightening, it would be trapped. It could not be removed without untightening the ligature. If the finger was withdrawn before full tightening, then the space closure would have happened after the check was complete. This timeline is forensically coherent. It explains how a finger could have been inserted before deep embedding, while also explaining why no finger could be inserted after the final tightening, after the furrow formed. But it requires understanding the ligature was checked, then tightened further. It requires the person to have applied loose ligature, allowed a check, and then consciously tightened it further. This is consistent with someone who understood they were applying a lethal restraint, someone who wanted to make sure it was positioned correctly before applying final pressure. Someone making a choice, not consistent with an accidental application, not consistent with panic response, consistent with intent and deliberation. The physiological cascade. Understanding what happens inside the neck. When a ligature compresses the neck, several things happen in rapid sequence. First 5-15 seconds, carotid arteries are compressed. Blood flow to the brain decreases. Consciousness begins to be affected. 15-30 seconds. Consciousness is lost. The person goes limp. Brain damage begins occurring from oxygen. Deprivation. 30 seconds onward. Cerebral edema develops, brain swelling. Tissue throughout the head swells due to oxygen deprivation. Pressure builds inside the skull. As this happens, the tissues in the neck swell too. The engorged tissue surrounds the cord. The cord sinks deeper as surrounding tissue swells. What was a moderate furrow becomes a deep furrow. The deep furrow we see at autopsy is partly the result of the tightness of the cord, but also partly the result of this post-tightening tissue swelling. The cord has been embedded into tissue that has swollen and become congested from the very asphyxiation the cord is causing. This means achieving the deep furrow documented required the ligature to remain in place through the entire physiological cascade. It could not have been briefly applied and released. It could not have been loosened when the person lost consciousness. It had to be maintained through the swelling, through the tissue congestion, through the complete physiological failure. The depth of the furrow is evidence of sustained application through death. What the physical evidence communicates, the forensic language. The garrote, with its deep furrow, its entwined hair, its sophisticated mechanical construction, its precise positioning, its petechial hemorrhages, its surrounding abrasions, all of this speaks. It speaks of someone who positioned themselves close to the restrained person. It speaks of fine motor control and intentionality. It speaks of time spent constructing the device, placing it, applying it. It speaks of pressure sustained through the moment of consciousness loss and beyond. It speaks of someone making a choice, not an accidental application, not a panicked moment of desperation, a deliberate action, constructed and maintained. The embedding of the cord is not consistent with something applied momentarily. It is consistent with something applied with pressure and maintained. The hair in the knot suggests manipulation and tightening. The construction of the device suggests knowledge or focused determination. All of this physical evidence creates a timeline and a narrative that is difficult to reconcile with an intruder attack. It is easier to reconcile with someone with control, with access, with time, with mechanical knowledge or quick thinking, and with intent. The cord embedded in tissue tells a story. If we read it carefully, it is a story about what was possible, what was probable, and what the physical laws of the human body allow and do not allow. And in reading that story, we may find it does not match the story we have been told.
So, when I think about the ligature and what it tells us, I start with the very basic question. Why would an intruder bring a stun gun and then also construct or use a ligature? Because I think those two things kind of serve completely different purposes. You have a stun gun, which is like supposed to be used as an extraction tool. It's going to, what it's told to us that it does, it's going to incapacitate quickly. Somehow, that's what the stun gun is going to do. It allows you, but the point of it is that what the intruder was using it for is to allow them to move fast. And so essentially you get the child from point A to point B without any resistance, no noise, no struggle, stun gun, the bedroom, she's asleep, you carry her downstairs, move through the house, get her out of the window well, you hand her to your partner, you're out of there. Clean extraction. You don't need the ligature. You don't need any restraints. Stun gun does the job. But the ligature, I think, is something else entirely. A ligature is a restraint, right? So the stun gun isn't going to restrain anything, right? The ligature is designed to restrain you, right? Physically restrain you. You can't move. You can't do anything. You can't fight me. Can't do anything. It's designed, to control. It's a controlling mechanism. Like the one that we saw, it's a controlling mechanism. It's designed to hold somebody in place. You're preventing movement. You prevent escape. You prevent resistance. And I think what troubles me is that if an intruder had a stun gun, if the stun gun worked the first time, if then after it working the first time, you grow confidence, you build your confidence, or that builds your confidence, in the tool, you probably, and now you know how she responds to the stun gun. Now you probably use it repeatedly if needed. You don't switch tools. You wouldn't suddenly say, okay, I stunned her once. Now I need to construct this complex restraint device. That probably wouldn't happen. And so if the stun gun works, you stun her again if she wakes up. Keep her unconscious, keep her asleep. You don't need to pause to tie any knots or construct any garrote. You move, you extract, you leave. You don't waste time. You don't do any of that. But one of two things. If you're constructing a garrote, either you constructed it ahead of time when they were gone, as you got into the house and wrote the ransom note, or you constructed it afterwards during the time when something went left, in which you would have had to physically stop or send your partner to say, looks like she's about to get out of hand. I'm a grown man. I can't handle this 6-year-old. She's getting the best of me. You go create a ligature, or if it's one person, they say, hold on, stop for a second. You stay there. Stop fighting me. I'm going to go create a ligature because you're getting out of hand, little missy. I'm going to go create a ligature and I will be back with you in just a second. The ligature was planned. So in the presence of the ligature combined with the presence of the stun gun sort of creates this logical problem for the intruder narrative, I think. You can't simultaneously have a tool that's designed for rapid extraction and also have a tool that's designed for sustained restraint. Unless you, obviously these tools are serving different purposes at different times, unless one of them wasn't part of the original plan, which is what I'm thinking. And this is what I think, when we think about the evidence, this is what I think it might actually tell us. The ligature wasn't part of the original extraction plan. I got my stun gun. I'm in and I'm out. That's all I need. The ligature was possibly applied after something happened, after the primary event, after the situation has escalated beyond what you can manage with the stun gun alone, right? Because a person who is planning an abduction, ideally you wouldn't construct a ligature in the victim's home. If you're managing an emergency, right? When you're dealing with something that escalates sort of beyond your control, you realize that the situation isn't what you thought it would be, and you might then use whatever that you have available in this situation, which might be, oh shoot, I grabbed some tape. You just use whatever constraint that you have available, whatever materials that you have on hand. Another thing that gets to me is that the ligature placement around her hands loosely. John said it was so tight, but I think the autopsy report and other things it just fell right off. Tight, and it fell right off. John is telling us it was tight, but everybody else is saying, oh, it was really loose. I think the autopsy report says it was loose. It just came right off. Well, John said he couldn't get it untied. Why do we have such a mismatch? Why is there so much of a mismatch in information? I'm genuinely confused. There shouldn't be this much of a mismatch. Criminal said 118, but John's check was, 118,223. Later on, it was 118,117. Then why would they ask for 118 even if they knew that you had 118,223 or 118,117? Why ask for 118? Why dumb it down? Why not say 75 or 100 even? Why not say 125 or 150? Doesn't make sense. There's a lot of inconsistency. Okay, so anyways, when you're losing, somebody said it was loose. They said it was loose. So if it's loose, that means that you're not securing them properly. The only place it was tight was in the head region. The only place it was tight was in the head region. That seems intentional. So you're not securing them properly. If it's loose, you're not securing them properly. It's not tied in a way that would actually restrain her effectively. Right? And this isn't the way, or if this isn't the work, I would say, of somebody who planned restraint methodology. I need to write this down. This isn't somebody who actually planned this. This is someone, we're not talking about somebody who actually has experience in some sort of bondage or restraint. This is somebody who, in like a moment of crisis, has tried to do something with a cord and a stick and has tried to create some sort of, mechanism of control, but didn't do it right because they didn't have that much training or had very little training, little to no training. Right. So you can't even tie the rope right. And so when we talk about an intruder who prepared for an abduction, who may have bought the proper materials or half of the proper materials, if restraint was actually part of the plan, then they would have known what they were doing. They would have practiced this many times at home. But when you have something that's loose around her wrists and this sort of improper binding, then this suggests a level of desperation. I'm desperate to try to come up with something to try to, fix this in a way that works to my benefit, whatever that benefit might be. Right? This is desperation. You're trying to manage a situation that you were not prepared for. Would you look at that? Somehow all this planning and this and that, and you're not prepared for this. But you're not prepared for something that you started causing. What do I mean by that? How do you start performing, as they might say the intruder did, performing an inappropriate crime with this individual, using this ligature, right? Oh, maybe it was tightened and let loose, let loose part of this sort of fantasy of this guy. Fair enough. While the other guy is watching, might I add. But why are you doing that? And you're not even prepared to deal with the consequences of such a thing should things go left. Oh, I slipped and held it too long. Oh, I slipped and made a mistake. Slipped and held it for 45 seconds to a minute. Couldn't. Why would the criminal create a problem for themselves inside of the house that they can't solve? Man, get the heck out of here. Why would I actively create a problem for myself inside of the house that I cannot solve? Why would I do that? You got to think. Think. What criminal is actively in the freaking house creating problems for themselves that they cannot solve. Why would I do that? I'm just trying to extract and make $118,000. That's all I want to do. I just want to make $118,000. That's it. I just came in here for $118,000. I really don't have a problem with John. So when John is jumping up here and the FBI and Douglas, I can't remember, I think Mike Douglas or whatever his name, is like, oh, they had a personal vendetta against you, John. The letter said they didn't. The letter said, I respect you. I don't have a problem with you. Oh, no. This is an inside job. This is somebody who had a problem with me. And for whatever reason, they were jealous of me. They weren't jealous of you, John. They didn't like the country. That's what they said. It's the country that they didn't like. Oh, no, had to be me. Bro, why would the intruder go in there and create problems for themselves? I'm talking about self-inflicted problems that don't have to happen. It's like we're watching a movie where it's written into the script. You have to create self-inflicted wounds. It's part of the drama of the script. You have to. Even though we're watching a train wreck, right? That we're like, yo, please don't go in that room. Please don't go in that room. You know in your mind, for the movie's sake, to carry out the scenario, they have to go in the room, and whatever happens to them in that room has to happen because it is the worst case scenario. And in a movie or a drama series, they have to encounter the worst case scenario. However they get out of that, that has to happen. But that's in a movie. We're talking about in real life where a criminal was like, you know what? I'm about to go through this crime like it's a movie, like the Rockford Files. What the heck are you talking about? I'm about to go through this case like it's a movie. I'm going to be Superman. I'm going to be a superhero. I'm going to act like I'm untouchable in every single way. I'm going to turn on the water faucets and I'm going to call myself the Water Bandits or something like that. Something predictable, something that can lead back to me and the cops can find me in a hurry. That's what I'm going to do. That's what we're looking at. A criminal who has decided to do that. My thing is this. One of two things. Either the ligature was planned or the stun gun was planned. But we know that the ligature was planned, so they planned to restrain JonBenet in some kind of way. They felt at some point in time they would need to restrain her. But if you need to restrain her, why do you need the stun gun? If you have tape, why do you need the stun gun? It sounds like you got that part taken care of. Why do you need the stun gun then? Doesn't make sense. You need either or. So you kind of catch her with the stun gun. Looks like you don't need the restraint. But somehow you planned to abduct her. You planned for the restraint. Listen to me. You planned for the restraint and the abduction, but you didn't plan on how much money you would take. You didn't know how much money you would take, but somehow you knew that you would find John's paycheck stubs so that then that could tell you how much. You see what I'm saying? What kind of stupidity is that? Oh, I don't know how much I'm going to write. I'm just going to go in there and find it on your desk when I get in there. So you plan a ransom, you plan a kidnapping without knowing how much money you're going to ask for? You don't even know how much the man is worth. You're talking about planning a kidnapping to ask You walk into a crime scene not knowing what they have available, assuming that they're going to have a paint kit or something to finish the ligature with? So you don't even bring the rope? Oh, I'll bring the rope, but, I'm going to break something apart in the house so I can complete this. What? Hopefully they have something there, maybe a bat that I can use. Maybe, I don't know. What? What are you talking about? What criminal does that? shows up with half of the material knowing, because he showed up. Man, John went on an interview or something like that and said that. Talk about he showed up with half the material, knowing that he only needed just enough to what the heck are you talking about? What criminal does that? I'll wait. What criminal has ever done that? Oh, I know. Okay. So if, okay, so I'm gonna commit a crime in your house, and if you can be so kind to contribute some of the stuff from your facility, then I'll be able to complete the crime. But if I show up, Jay, and you don't have no tape, I can't. You see why that's hard for me? If I show up and you don't have any tape, I'm not gonna be able to abduct your daughter. I'm not gonna be able to do it. So what I need you to do is I need you to go to Walmart for me and get this, and this. So by the time I show up, now you're with me. By the time I show up, you got what I need, so I don't have enough money. I can only bring half of the stuff, Jay. Come on. You know how this works. Don't play with me. I can only bring half of the stuff. You bring your half, and so when I get there, you go out of the house for 3 or 4 hours. That's all I need to kind of sit there, play arts and crafts, get this stuff ready. And then you guys come back, go to sleep. And then once you go to sleep, I can, like, while you're gone, I can start making stuff, whatever. And I get the note ready. So by the time you guys come back, put JonBenet up in the bed. And then from there, I can start using this stuff. Are you with me? So I need you to have that stuff when I get there and get ready. Oh, by the way, I don't need a key. Can you just leave the window open for me so I can I don't want to deal with all that, whatever. I don't mind moving the grate, but just keep the window open so I can kind of come through and work my way through. Okay. We good? What criminal does that? You've got to be kidding me. And this is a story that we're being told. What the heck? It's impossible. You want the answer? It's impossible. So many coincidences. Oh, yeah. But if you think about this and that, you don't have to think about crap. It's not real. I'll let you get back to the video. Take care of yourself.